Thank you very much for the invitation to this really inspiring conference. I'm aware that I'm the only speaker not from the UK, so I'll zoom out a little bit and introduce you to our practice that we call direct urbanism. And I'll show you some selected strategies that we developed as part of direct urbanism, and then show you two projects how we employ the one strategy. I will go more into depth today, which is the production of desires. I'm a little bit irritated. Okay. What is direct urbanism? Direct urbanism for us means to involve art and artistic strategies in a durational process in urban development. So far, until now, we've heard a lot of how art can engage in planning strategies, in communities. We've heard from the other side, from the side of the developers, how they involve the communities. But what our goal of Transparidiso with direct urbanism is to bring those different sides together and to really talk about how an artistic way of thinking and acting can produce a very different type of urban planning, addressing the current societal and social issues in a way that we can really think of what kind of values does our society need today. We consider direct urbanism a new method of planning beyond bottom-up and top-down. And direct urbanism produces situations for direct engagement and action, returning responsibility to people on site. And it also has the capability to address changing parameters, since we're living in times of constant changes and completely unforeseen new developments in politics, as we had recently experienced exactly 1 week ago, that from one moment to the other, the right-wing Austrian government collapsed. A miracle. So those new unplannable conditions really ask for completely different approaches when we work as artists, when we work as architects. But we go beyond these traditional definitions of disciplines. That's why I really always like the quote by Antanas Mokus: "When I sit in a trap, I behave like an artist." Antanas Mokus, the former mayor of Bogota, a philosopher who really created completely different ways of changes in this crime-ridden situation of Bogota. What does the urban practitioner need? The urban practitioner needs especially to not being submitted to direct expectations by the commissioning parties. So I will introduce a few of the strategies that we've been developing during the last more or less 10 years, especially anticipatory fiction. I think it is a very important strategy to believe in things that we think are not being able to be realized. So what we often do is we imagine a situation as if it had been already realized in order to go beyond our limits in thinking and self-censorship. Macro-utopia. This morning there was already mentioned the necessity for creating new utopias. I think it's important to not always strive for the huge changes, because then we often feel helpless. But if we are convinced that every single little step, whoever makes those steps and every single little act can contribute to really producing a more just society, I think then we can really contribute. And last but not least, the production of desires. The term was first introduced by Park Fiction about in the mid-1990s, I think 1996. It's a method which we think is extremely valuable for producing programs in a collaborative process which go far beyond the normal functions of urban planning and urban development. And I'll show you now 2 projects and how we develop this production of desire in very different geographical and social contexts, and with a very different outcome, which could both be read as the basis for developing a completely different type of a master plan. The first one is the First World Congress of the Missing Things, a project I realized in Baltimore in 2014 in a collaboration with students of the University of Applied Arts. After I had gone through the process of proposing the project, I selected this project because it was part of the NEA funding program of creative placemaking, heavily criticized on my side. So when I was invited, I was actually thinking, how could I deal with that wonderful invitation and really interesting invitation on the one side, but how could I deal with it really positioning my approach to what I find necessary in terms of urban planning, in terms of the engagement of art, the role art can play for societal issues, and creating a process that would go beyond the limited time of the funding program. Just a little bit of the background where we're at. The former vivid city center of Baltimore. Baltimore is one of the most shrinking cities in the US, to the same degree as Detroit, but usually we talk only about Detroit. You have to see that on the other side, the white flight that took place in the 1950s actually created the richest area in the US, which I wasn't aware of before I came there, between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. What's left now is a situation like that. That's the former city center of Baltimore, all boarded up. You can see trees are growing out of the facades. So basically, the whole area is populated by homeless people, by drug addicts, and by ex-convicts. So when I proposed the First World Congress of the Missing Things, I made it very clear that I was not entering that situation in order to fulfill any kind of expectations from the commissioning party, and made it very clear that art can never resolve problems or issues that are created by a certain type of neoliberal politics or urban development that is based on creating profit as the main goal without taking into consideration the needs of people living on site. But, of course, art can do something in the context of urban development. Art can ask questions that others don't ask. And art can, and this is, I think, a completely underestimated quality and function in when we think of programs of urban development, because it is not measurable. It is art can create poetic moments beyond the spectacle. And those poetic moments, they are really related to what we find on site, to the very specific geographical and social context, and can be discovered and unveiled every single time from a very new perspective. So the idea of the First World Congress of the Missing Things was, of course, a kind of trick I used, because we all know what a congress is. It produces knowledge, so it's an accepted format, very established, but of course a very exclusive format. So I shifted that format, first of all concerning the topic. Missing things is not a scientific topic. And I said that I would like to produce a congress in public space, being produced by the people, the whole content of the missing things being produced not only by the people in that dilapidated area, but from all parts of Baltimore. At the same time, there was happening this conference on creating placemaking. I cannot go into all the details. The whole project was part of a huge other project of unique European network of institutes of culture. So the Goethe Institute in Washington, D.C. was involved, and some participant in a night action put up this this large placard, who is creative placemaking? Very important question. It's not something abstract, but it's concrete people who are taking responsibility or in having a major impact on the political situation. So what we did was creating information venues in different situations. Here you see the formerly very famous Lexington Market Hall, now the one hub of drug addicts, right next to this arts and entertainment districts, where I decided to choose the entrance to the subway station of Lexington Market as public space, as the location for the Congress of the Missing Things. We had certain small performances in public space, and at the same time we already put up a website where we collected the missing things that were contributed so that people could follow on a daily basis the development of the project. And in the end we held the Congress at the entrance of Lexington Market. What is important about the setting for the conference is that we created this non-hierarchical structure of tables, completely the opposite of the normal setting of a conference where the people in knowledge sit up front and the others are listening. And this is an aspect I'm very much concerned in all our projects and also in my individual work as an artist, to address different audiences and ask questions, who are the publics and who are the authors. So you can see that people could choose the topics they wanted to discuss. And then in the end, we put together the charter of the missing things and handed it over to the mayor of the city of Baltimore. I also present that project because it shows the problematics of creative placemaking, or at least this one program, very well, because the big success of the project of the conference was that there were two concrete outcomes. One was to install an information kiosk at the entrance to Lexington Market so that people would get information on subsidy programs, and the other one was to rehabilitate one of the dilapidated houses on Howard Street as a vocational center to train people to fix up houses. I was invited to present the project at the UN conference in New York just 2 months later. A sponsor was found. I mean, a real miracle. Money was there so that we would have been able to realize those two very concrete next steps, and the city of Baltimore was not interested anymore. Just quickly, because we're talking about new towns and strategies for new towns, what I presented so far, I think there is no difference of what is necessary or important to consider when we talk about artistic involvement or the future of our cities. There's no difference between if we're talking about an existing part of a city or if we're creating a new city. It's always about the same aspects. How do we want to place, or how can we place the individual and also persons of very different backgrounds in a way of living together with respect and appreciation. Last 5 minutes? Or?
No, yeah. Have a minute and then.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll quickly, because for the Second World Non-Congress in Aspen Lake City, which is this new urban development, we shifted the whole notion of missing things. We pointed out the things that would be missing after the completion of the construction site, looking at the construction site as the one more experimental and more vivid climate. Then I'll jump directly to Harbor for Cultures. We're working with the situation of the old harbor in Trieste. We've been working there for 2 years now. And what we did was, in many, many meetings, playing with establishing this, distributing a map, having carte blanche meetings, collaborating with the Gallery Trieste Contemporanea, we created a collection of desires for the future of the Porto Vecchio, which is a huge inner city harbor area, which is completely neglected, but it is the heart of the Austrian former monarchy. So it is a really very significant space for the whole history of the area and for asking questions of how can we establish values that are usually exchanged in a harbor, which are based on economical interests. How would we be able to place values of humanistic and cultural interest for the whole society? And we collected those 100 desires, and if you give me a few seconds and I would start playing the video and you get an impression on the completely poetic and unexpected wide range of qualities people have been imagining.